Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for new updates. Envision yourself disowned by a legendary figure in Hollywood. Father declined. You can see this on your birth certificate. As a child you see your dad in movies, but he always denies your existence. Scott Eastwood endured this harsh truth for a long time. Clint Eastwood maintained a surprising secret until he was 94 years old, and we're going to get into it today. Listen up, because this is going to rock your worldview regarding the Dirty Harry actor. Clint Eastwood is famously known as the quintessential bad guy, the silent leading man who captivated audiences with his performance, the Oscar-winning filmmaker. However, when they weren't looking, he was a parent who refused to even sign his son's birth certificate. Fans have long pondered the mystery of Scott Eastwood's seemingly meaningless existence in his father's shadow. There were no family photos or red carpet appearances, but the eerie quiet said it all. At the age of 94, Clint has finally spoken up, and the news is more stunning than anybody could have anticipated. Hollywood was not meant to have Scott Eastwood. Tragically, his father's name was missing on his birth certificate, which was issued on March 21, 1986. Father declined was all that was written. Give that some thought. Despite being a parent, one of the most famous performers in the world has chosen to ignore his own offspring. This wasn't just some hearsay in the tabloids. Scott would be tormented by this official document for many years. However, we must return to the beginning of the story in order to comprehend it. The 1950s were not a glamorous time for Clint Eastwood as he began his ascent to fame. While studying everything he could about filmmaking, he got by with little parts, earning pennies. His breakout role was in the TV series Rawhide, where his rough charisma won over viewers. Then Sergio Leone's trilogy starring the dollar came out, the spaghetti westerns that catapulted him to superstardom around the world. Even though he didn't say much in those films, his charisma was contagious. Many were interested in getting to know the man who went unidentified. Dirty Harry came out in the 1970s, and Clint was now more than simply a cowboy. He had his own set of regulations and was a tough officer. Are you feeling fortunate, punk? Became more than a line. There was a philosophical shift. His position as Hollywood royalty was solidified by 5 Naughty Harry films. His personal life was in shambles, though, and it would have an effect on his unborn kid even as his star was rising. Funds flooded in. Luce revealed his humorous side and became a tremendous hit at the box office, but fame followed in every other direction. He received his first Oscar as director for the film Unforgiven. Another one was brought to him by Million Doll Baby. Longer was he merely an actor. A natural disaster had struck. Even more impressively, Clint was elected mayor of Caramel by the Sea in 1986, the year in which Scott was born. His family's lives were the only thing that remained untarnished by his influence. You see, Clint was a domestic failure even as he dominated Hollywood. Margaret Johnson was his bride in 1953. However, he was having extramarital encounters even while they were courting. Lori, a daughter born in 1954, was the product of one of those affairs. He concealed her existence for many years. After that, in 1964, his daughter Kimber was born to stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis. During the entire time that he was actually married to Johnson, like movie credits, the affairs piled up, getting progressively more intricate. The intrusion of Scott's mother, Jason Reeves, into Clint's life revealed a labyrinth of secrets. The fact that Clint had an affair with Jason, a flight attendant, was never made public. Sandra Lockhart, the actress Clint referred to as his love of his life, was living with him when she became pregnant with Scott in 1985. What is the proper way to break the news to the woman you claim to love that you had an extramarital affair? Oh, I see. You don't let anyone know. The birth certificate cannot be signed by you. You continue to let the boy to wonder why his father won't take him in as he grows up. While Scott was a little boy, his mother took him to Hawaii. Scott saw baseball games with empty seats while other kids' dads were there. Scott faced blatant rejection while other children's birth certificates included their fathers' names. His father's identity was clear to him. Although Clint Eastwood was well known, the fact that he was the son of a legendary actor was meaningless if his father refused to give him credit. That rejection hurt so much that it changed everything. It wasn't what you'd anticipate, but Scott and Clint started to develop something of a relationship when he ultimately relocated to California as a teenager. There were no touching father-son scenes or circumstances where time was made up. Clint instead had his unwavering rule. You have to work for whatever you have. Using the Eastwood name, handouts or shortcuts is not allowed. Scott would subsequently disclose that his father never gave him a cent. Scott was busy parking cars and building houses while his famous friends were out partying. he inherited a penchant for counting pennies from his multi-millionaire father. He avoided using the Eastwood name altogether for a long time. He avoided having it thought that he was just following in his father's footsteps by going by Scott Reeves, his mother's surname. Disillusionment extended beyond monetary matters. Scott went on an audition binge for parts in his dad's movies. Gran Torino, he was cast in a little role. Almost unnoticeable, Invictus. American Rifleman. Someone else was Clint's first choice. Think about the humiliation of having your own father tell you that you don't measure up during an audition. Just picture yourself in the audience, while he cast other performers in parts that you coveted so much. It was an unambiguous message. Being my son is meaningless in this field. But just when we think we've hit rock bottom, the universe throws us a curveball. A catastrophe that would shatter most individuals befell Scott in 2014. It appeared like his girlfriend was involved in a small automobile accident, just a fender bender, when he was out. Unfortunately, her car's airbag wasn't working properly. A shard of metal went straight through her spinal column as it detonated. Her death was immediate. Before he sobbed openly in an interview in 2016, Scott had never discussed it publicly. He finally acknowledged how much it had devastated him. "I've never told anybody that, Dee," he muttered, his voice quivering with emotion. He had struggled his whole life without his father's approval, and now he had lost the woman he loved in the most illogical manner imaginable. He could have crumbled under the weight of adult sorrow on top of the rejection he felt as a youngster. Even though many expected it, Scott's inheritance from Clint extended beyond his good looks. That tenacity, that reluctance to give up, had been passed down to him from Eastwood. Things started to change in 2015. Despite his father's rejection, for American Sniper, Scott strangely won the starring role in The Longest Ride. In his professional life, he began going by the name Eastwood. He had had enough of trying to hide his true identity as Clement's son. To hell with his dad's support if he refused. From his perspective, he would give the name a meaningful purpose. Then, out of nowhere, came the breakthrough that no one had anticipated. When Clint and Scott finally did an interview together in 2016, it was for Esquire. The father and son were finally face to face after decades of separation, and they were both speaking to the same reporter. What transpired was both painful and therapeutic. "Until I irritated my mom, I lived with her in Hawaii," Scott joked. "Then I moved in with my dad and further irritated him." In fact, Clint grinned. Although it was brief, the audience who had witnessed their icy relationship found it monumental. Things that no one knew were divulged in the interview. Even Clint confessed that he had been following Scott's job progress. Whenever he came in, he would do an excellent job. "Now the chicks are calling and asking where Scott is," Clint stated sharply. "Where am I?" they would often inquire. Deeper discussion ensued. Clint shared his philosophical views. Absolute chaos reigns. Ignore everyone else. Use your intuition. He had been offering Scott the same advice in a different form the whole time. In reality, Scott's father had taught him invaluable lessons in character development through his apparently harsh treatment of him. He insisted that I earn everything. Nothing but hard work. No handouts or shortcuts, Scott adamantly stated. However, Clint's explanation of why he had been so critical of Scott was possibly the most illuminating. He spoke with a slighter tone than normal, claiming that others believed he was nasty. "But I know firsthand the consequences for spoiled children. As a result, they become disoriented, dependent, and damaged." Scott had to be powerful, in my opinion. I wanted him to realize that he was deserving of his accomplishment. It was more of an explanation than an apology. Clint broke his silence after years of keeping quiet. Initially non-existent, the relationship had progressed to complex, and now it was reaching comprehension. Scott updated everyone in 2024 on his father, who was then 94 years old. No one was able to kill him. Scott claimed to have witnessed both the Great Depression and Y2. That shapes a new type of individual. You just do it without grumbling or complaining. Either of them may have been described by the terms. Their bond deepened after Christina Sendera's passing in 2023. After dating for 10 years, Clint's girlfriend suddenly passed away following a heart attack. Clint seemed defenseless like never before. Scott took it upon himself to see whether his father was all right. Now the orphan who had no father figure in his life was looking after the man who had rejected him. "He serves as a source of motivation for me. Recently," Scott stated. "Do you think I'd rehire him? Without a doubt. Can I make sense of his motivations? Yes. In general, do I concur? We'll keep that private." This is the most level-headed reply. You could hope to hear from someone who was within their rights to be angry. To tell the truth, Clint Eastwood didn't exactly disown Scott. Something worse and better could have come out of his actions. He stood firm in his refusal to ease his son's burden. Scott was made to work for every bit of success he had. He fashioned a furnace test that could transform a feeble man into a powerful one. Scott came out of it stronger, more motivated, and more genuine than the majority of Hollywood youths. But did it really matter? Were the anguish and heartbreak really essential? Would Clint have been just as effective if he had used less brutal means? Only the Eastwoods have the answers to these questions. This is what we know. A man and a woman who are 56 years apart, and who have been through very different things, have managed to understand one another. The birth certificate that originally stated father declined now seems more like an invitation than a refusal. Scott Eastwood rose to the occasion and emerged victorious. Scott is officially breaking into the acting industry today. He's more than just Clint's son now. Just the name Scott Eastwood is enough to make you recognize him. And at 94 years old, Clint has unveiled the strategy underneath what appeared to be lunacy. The point wasn't to put his son down. The focus was on making one. As we near the end of this remarkable tale, consider this. Could you have endured what Scott did? How would you have fared under such intense scrutiny? Also, what are your thoughts on the justification of Clint's tough love approach? Feel free to share your ideas in the comments area. Would you call this brilliant parenting or cruel? The Eastwood legacy has expanded beyond film. That much is obvious. The story follows a father and son as they navigate the most challenging circumstances in order to reunite. That final scene could be the most Clint Eastwood-esque of